I moved into his neighborhood when I was 9 years old. Not quite 9. It really was about 60 years ago. And we were in the 4th grade together. He was sort of outrageous, kind of like he is today. We spent our childhood in each other's homes. We played card games. We played ball games. We dodged the snakes and centipedes and tarantulas in our neighborhood. We talked about it, and the stories got bigger and bigger and bigger every time we repeated them. We laughed and we cried together. We shared our family's losses together. When I was about to have my bid for president prematurely terminated by an avalanche of junk, he went to his employer and said, "You can fire me if you want. I'm going to New Hampshire. I'm not going to let this happen without fighting it." And he started going around. It's an unbelievable story. He started going around to radio stations and demanding interviews. And say, "Look, I grew up in a Republican family. I've known this guy all his life. Let me tell you the truth. Don't believe all this stuff." He was devastatingly effective. They still talk about it in small hamlets in New Hampshire. This Greek invasion from nowhere. What is this guy doing? He shows up in my office and all of a sudden, boom. Anyway, we've been doing this a long time. The day Paul and Linda lost Thea started out to be one of the happier days of my life. I played the old course at St. Andrews. I showed up at Skibo Castle in northern Scotland. I walked in the door, they told me what had happened. I walked out of the door, I got on the airplane and came home. And I watched the next chapter of their lives. Several of you told me you saw the Letterman show last night and talked to me about how disgusting I was about my granddaughter, which I probably was. But the fact that you, of all the things I love about you and all the things we've done together for 60 years, the thing I love most is that you chose to honor your daughter's life in this way. And look, a couple of weeks ago, I went to Oklahoma City because I was president 20 years ago when the Murrah building came down. And I've been deeply involved with them. And ironically, the then Republican governor of Oklahoma, Frank Keating, was my college pal. And we were fighting over politics in college. And we continued it until Oklahoma City came. And when that happened, it just burned away all the things that divided us. And there we were, together as a country, naked in our aching humanity. That's the way I felt. His daughter was one of the people, of 50 people in America that had a private little zip code back when people sent snail mail. And I went to the White House and I was so worried about becoming isolated and losing touch with people. And so I gave the Leopoulos family my little zip code to make sure that nobody could lose my letters that came in there. And then 50 people in the country that had known me all my life would come and say, "You look like a total ass this week. Here's what you should do." It was wonderful. But the best letters I got were from Thea. She's like 8 years old or something, writing to the president and I. This is the way it looks to me. It usually made pretty good sense. Why am I telling you this? I prepared for Oklahoma City, literally, deliberately, by going with Hillary to spend the night with our granddaughter. And I fed her and bathed her and put her to bed, and I looked at her there, and I knew what those people were going to be feeling tomorrow. And everybody else was going to tell them how great they were. They chose to honor their losses, and they chose well. It's a different place now. They made something out of the loss they endured. I don't know any person personally who ever made more out of a more painful moment than Paul and Linda have. By giving the gift that's shown in the eyes of their daughter to all these kids who aren't kids anymore. And I'm sure that they wouldn't mind my saying that it may well be that the most important beneficiaries of all this work are people who will never perform on this stage for you, not if we do this for another 30 years. There's one thing I have learned from the time I was a little kid, and I spent a lot of my life with my grandparents and my great uncle, my great aunt, and nobody had any money. We never took vacations. All we had was conversations over meals. It's the reason I got to be president. And really, we know how to talk down here. And we know how to listen and tell stories and all that. And so what I learned is everybody's got a story. And what you saw from those young people singing and dancing tonight, they're living their story. All that stuff about my foundation, I'm just trying to give all these people a chance to live their story. That's what the arts do. There's massive scientific evidence that people learn everything else better if they're exposed to the arts. There are whole programs devoted, and a lot of them you've tried to get into schools here, in integrating the arts into teaching science and history and social science and literature. With visual arts, there's all this. Look, so we can tell all this, but when you strip it all away, you get to be our age. You've had a remarkable life, much more blessing than you could have ever deserved. You just want every kid to have a chance to live his or her story. That's what this is about. It is horrible that so many of our schools under financial stresses have taken arts programs out. One of the neatest things they've done is raise over $1 million for 400 schools to give 230,000 kids a chance to have arts by giving their teachers art supplies so the poor teachers who aren't getting paid enough in the first place don't have to buy them all out of their pocket. There's a lot of stories there. Some kid is going to draw a picture, maybe not as good as this, but something will happen in there in that brain. And the story will be better than it otherwise would. You just think about it. All we've got is our stories. Last night I was in New York with the almost 84-year-old former president of Brazil I served with. And every year the Brazilian American Chamber of Commerce has this big old dinner and they give the award to somebody. So they gave the award to him and to me last night basically because they wanted to honor him and they thought I'd help draw a crowd, I think. So I was talking about this guy and how he was this erudite economist who had suffered from being arrested during the military era, and then he got out and built a modern economy. I said, but the most important thing he did was to pay the poorest mothers in the country a basic stipend so they could feed their kids if they could prove that their kids were in school 80% of the time. He gave millions of desperately poor people better stories. And the reason I want you to give money is, and the reason I intend to keep doing it, and the reason this is my 13th one of these events, and thank you very much, Annie Manitos, for doing them all in Washington, and thank you very much, everybody, for coming here so we can do them at home, is that I have seen these stories. There are all these kids in the mountains, in the Delta, you name it, whose parents are doing all they can do to keep body and soul together and just basically pay their bills and feed their kids, and they will not have these chances without this program. And maybe they sing flat and can't paint three-dimensional and couldn't dance without falling off this stage. By the way, that's pretty impressive that ballet dancers don't have to stay on such a small space, and they rarely have to look their audiences in the eye this close. But I want you to think about it like that. You just think about the human potential you will retrieve by spending this amount of money you spent tonight. That's what I want you to think about. Not just that brilliant singer, but all the kids in the Parkview Choir. Every time they open their mouth and sing, their life gets a little bigger. Their sense of possibility grows a little more real. That's all this is about. So I once knew a guy when I was 9 who was more fun than any other friend I had, who often beat me at cards and never cheated. Who told me horrible jokes I still remember. He married a wonderful woman. They had 3 fabulous kids. I adore them all. And Thea is as real to me today as she was the last time I saw her, because of the way Paul and Linda chose to honor her life. They did not let her become a victim, and they did not become victims. They became givers. Could we do the same? I don't know. But I know what they did. And I know that's why we're here. And I want you to think about all these young people that performed for us tonight and how you felt. And remember, there are thousands and more where they came from. May never make it to Broadway. May never make it to the New York Ballet. May never be exhibited in any of the great American art galleries. But everything you give them will change their lives and will give them better stories. And in the end, it's all you got. And guess what? It's more than enough. Thank you very much.